thank you, everyone. And yeah, a happy new year to everyone once more. So I'm just going to quickly share my screen and straight to the point. I'll try as much as possible to do everything in 10 minutes. Thank you. Just to introduce myself quickly, Leuna. So just working towards completing my thesis on Gameful design for skills development for youths. But the interesting thing here is for us was to look at it from a different perspective and to look at it from a bottom-up approach rather than what we already know when it comes to community informatics and trying to solve problems. But I won't really go deep down into some details which you can read on the article. But one thing for us was, how do we engage youths in marginalized urban communities to learn skills, especially for now when it comes to the digital skills and towards the goal for 2030 in South Africa? I'm just going to go quickly into the slide. So the first thing I just want to remind us is the more we give importance to skill development, the more competent will be our youth. And this is from Narendra Modi. And from there, I'm just going to give a bit of a context so you understand where we're coming from when it comes to South Africa as a whole. It's very much a historical issue. So I think it's best we start from here so everyone has a clear understanding of where and why this study was necessary. So currently, well, during the time of writing, the unemployment rate was 46.6%. And of course, it was due to COVID. There's a reason from 39, I think, to 46.6%. And this includes what we call the discouraged workers here in South Africa. And that means people who are discouraged even to look for jobs. So the current stats would say 39.9, but when you include those who are discouraged to look for work, that increases to 46.6%, almost half of the population of the country. But out of this 46.6%, many of them are very much young people between the ages of 15 to 34 of age. And that's how South Africa classifies youth in South Africa. And most of these people live in marginalized communities. I think I'm not going to go in depth into the whole story of the history of South Africa when it comes to apartheid and the rest, but I think it's well known to everyone. But these forced a lot of people into communities that, like you can see on the background, where they're very much secluded from the main cities. And you can see the distance of traveling, and this was with Uber from the main city down to Mfuleni, where we carried out the study. It takes up to 28 to 38 minutes, depending on traffic and the paths you take. So, and one of the main reasons for this unemployment for these young people is many of them are unskilled and have no educational level. Of course, is linked to what former speaker Steve was talking about when it comes to wicked problems. And this was something that was, difficult for us to really tackle. Like, how do we go about solving this, or not really solving, but trying to understand how to, encourage these youths to learn digital skills, especially digital skills for, the current skills. There are quite a lot of jobs right now in South Africa, and those skills really needs digital skills. So the question is, if we have up to 46%, that's 1 out of 2 people of the youth in South Africa currently without employment, in incomplete high school education or have high school training. The question is, how do we get these people, engaged into learning, not just only engaged, also motivated into learning skills? Now, this is not in the educational space, but in a non-formal education space. Number one, the thing is, it is a non-formal education. Secondly, it is also basically people who have no education. So it was kind of like a struggle. But if we understand what gamification came from and what it is for, and that's where I'm going to pitch this from, and it's based on our way of seeing Gameful design. We preferred using the Gameful design for reasons which I mentioned in the paper. And we define this as using game elements or game design elements to achieve a goal-oriented psychological state. And that for us was critical. Of course, that psychological state is more of a gameful experience to increase user engagement, motivation, and participation in a non-game context. So this description encompasses all aspects of a gameful design definition, and which we call, number one, the use of game elements; two, a psychological state that is goal-oriented, which means there need to be a goal in mind that we need to achieve with this set of youths. And number three is to increase the user engagement, motivation, and participation, and of course, within a non-game context. So like I did mention about the distance between the main city and Infuleni, not just Infuleni, a lot of other places like that, and which would, for example, what we call the Cape Flats. There are a lot of people there, mainly youths, and it's quite difficult to get these people, on track. And of course, crime, and I must be sincere, taking myself from the town and living and staying with them for a while, I was scared for the first time, going there, because you hear a lot of, on the news about crime and the crime rate in these areas. But the truth is, one major thing that we found out was they were quite interested in wanting to learn skills, and if they see that you were sincere about what you're bringing to them, and hence why we used design anthropology. And design anthropology assisted or helped us, in a way to not just only live with them and understand the context of where and what these youths were going through, but also helped us, go through the process of designing what it looks like, or what they would expect, or explore what they would expect in this. And we use different methods. For instance, you can see there, it was more of a group workshops, various workshops, 5 of them, but in a time frame that was between in 5 months. So it was really, really short and to the point. And at the same time, we also had them, doing a self-reflection on the games and social networks that they use, and also the reflection on what they've gone through, because this set of youths also have gone through a bit of a training for 3 months in a place called African Tukun within the community. So we asked them what was those things that motivated them, to start, or what triggered them to start in the first place, what motivated them to continue, and what motivated them to continue the learning to complete the training. So all these angles, we derived what we call the gameful element identified. Sorry for the pictures, the pic is pixelated a bit. Identified for motivation and engagement. So 23 in-game system or system elements were found, which was missions, challenges after the analysis, which we also did and carried out with them, because it was very much involved with them. Badges, points, and virtual currencies, leaderboards, time pressure, allies and opponents play, communication, which means information sharing amongst themselves, feedback loops, onboarding, and so on. But there are also 3 aspects were not in system elements which we identified, which was the free internet, sources such as the digital technologies, and also stipends, like, what they need to survive while undergoing this training. And one thing that we decided on, which was also explained in the paper, and I'm just going to give a bit of a thank you to the reviewers on this, to help us, identify where and each elements really reside. So a big thank you to them. But the key thing here was trying to identify, where and which elements falls within the MDA framework. And the reason for the MDA framework is, I know there's a recent study on, gameful elements, which I think is Tondello and colleagues, 2017. And why we didn't really use the categorization of that when it comes to gamification was because that didn't really have the aesthetic aspect of gameful design. And from our findings, we saw it necessary that things like competition, fellowship, discovery, feeling of learning, the expression of happiness of winning, amusement was quite an integral part of gameful design, hence why we use the MDA rather than the most recent one. And it helps us, clearly classify what we need to design for when it comes to a gameful design. And of course, like I mentioned, the free internet, physical resources, and the financial assistance which they need. And apart from just finding out the gameful elements, we also asked of how do we, engage or incorporate these gameful elements into a system. And although I won't really go deep down into all this, it's in the paper, but the framework takes us through the process of how a designer or an app developer can, design this or develop this into a real app or an application that, would work. And one part I just want to stress more, which is the process of through the levels 2 to 7. And that part for me is the second or the third takeaway from the paper, which is, from the entry level to the technocrat. And why we designed it in 7 levels is from the lower level, which you can see from the user flow, this area from the beginner to the professional level, technocrat level, we try as much as possible. And by the way, this was all designed and co-designed with the youths at Infuleni. So we start first of all with the entry level, then to the beginner level and the novice. And this level is just to introduce the students about the basic foundation of what the digital skills or 21st century skills they'll be learning. Then they move on to a more advanced level, which is the knowledgeable level and proficient. And then the top level, which I just want to talk more a bit about, is the professional level. Now, at the professional level, let's say, for instance, the student was learning web development. So at that point in time, they are able to mentor, because that's one of the things we found out, that these youths do not have mentors within the community. So when they get to the professional level, they're able to, mentor other youths that are coming from the entry level down to the beginner level and all that. But the technocrat level, which is a level 7, which is a top level, they're able to get there once they learn 2 skills, because we want to encourage them to, get involved and more engaged into learning these skills, and at the same time attaining this self-actualization for themselves. And we don't want them to just stop learning one skill, but also to learn more skills and get engaged into learning more skills. So there we created a new level, which is a technocrat. Now, this technocrat level is more of a level that, you are a top level person, and you're well recognized within the system and within the community, that you know what your stuff and when it comes to the digital skills. So I'm just going to stop here quickly, but there are a lot more in the study, although this was just a part of the study which we presented in the paper. There's also the other part of the complexity of how complex this problem is, and that we were also looking at working on for another paper. But these gave us a clear indication on how, involved the youths were in this whole process, and how they decided on, or we decided, because I was more of a facilitator rather than being the one telling them what to do, of how they desire this whole process to work, and how the user flow and framework should work. And yeah, I'm just going to stop here. And if anyone's got any questions.
Thank you so much for the interesting presentation. And you have some questions on the chat. Can you check them?
That's a good question. Thanks, Carlo. In the challenge we face here in South Africa, most of them from a young age are expected to be breadwinners. Unfortunately, that's the context we find ourselves. here in South Africa. And in fact, most of them drop out by research. Most of them drop out at the age of between the ages of 7, I think, well, it's grade 10. So yeah, so that's from age 15. So you see quite a lot of them already doing some hard labor in order to get themselves, or get a family involved, or get the family out of poverty. And because they don't have the financial resources to get themselves in school and no scholarships and all that, so you really would see a lot of them from age 15 looking for work. And that's why the South Africa as a country classifies the youth from age 15 upwards. I'm not sure if I answered the question, Carlo. Okay, and the second says, let's assume that they would acquire digital skills and other 21st century skills. Okay, would they be jobs available for them, or would they be highly qualified or still unemployed? How is the deficit? Okay, good question. I really like that question. Thanks, Janica. The reason why we're actually focused on this is because there are actually jobs that are there for the 21st century skills, but they are not skilled enough. They're low skilled. And the high unemployment rate is basically because they're not skilled enough for those jobs, not because the jobs are not available. So that's why, and again, even if you look at the stats in Stats SA, that's the South African Stats Bureau, those who are actually educated and have skills are very low percentage compared to those who are of low skills. So hence why our target is not of those people, but of the youth that are of low skills. And because once they attain those skills, they're definitely going to get, there's a high chance, rather, not, I won't say a possibility because that's something we can test, but there's a high chance of them getting the jobs. And the last question here is, can you provide an example of skills that could be acquired by the students and of the corresponding gamification process you think you think to use? Okay, the skills we actually focus more were mostly digital skills. Like I gave the example also of web development and mobile app development. And some also, one other aspect which I forgot to mention is the entrepreneurial skill. And from our end, and I also lecture entrepreneurship, we see entrepreneurship as a skills-based, as a 21st century skill, and it's something you need to learn rather than just, practice business on the side. But so examples which they mentioned were business analyst, web development, entrepreneurship. And that's why if you look at the framework shows two different aspects where they need to choose a track through entrepreneurship and then also through employment. And through the entrepreneurship also, they could also learn skills. They have the option to also learn skills that are not just only entrepreneurial skills.